Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CDL podcast. This, as I'm sure you all know, is the pre-Toronto show, back-to-back days, back-to-back episodes. We're still approaching the end of that 3-week grind of 3 straight weeks of events. So we got a pre-show, post-show, 2 episodes a week. The grind of that, hopefully it's been enjoyable for you guys. It's been paying off a lot. We've been getting a lot of views and likes and comments and subs and everything on the videos. So this grind is really paying off from an analytics standpoint, and honestly, I've just been enjoying it a lot. It's kind of been fun instead of doing like 1 episode a week to kind of be able to do 2. Both are really fun. I don't really have an episode I prefer. I mean, the pre-shows are kind of fun, giving my predictions to see what can happen, but the post-shows are also sometimes a little bit more fun for me because I get to go into more statistics and analytics on the COD side of things, which to me is kind of the part I enjoy. I like looking at a deep dive into the stats and stuff. But yeah, in this episode, we are going to be going over my predictions for this upcoming loaded event, probably the most stacked event we've had. This is probably the first time we can say we have the clear-cut top 4 teams at the event, and it's our last home series before champs. It's a big weekend for seeding. There are 4 teams that can get the top 4 seeds, and then we have teams like Optic. Somehow if Seattle makes a run and if Toronto makes a crazy run, those 3 teams are all here fighting for that 8th spot. And like I said, as well as the top 4 teams fighting for number 1, all of them could possibly get it this weekend. It's not crazy far stretch that any of them could do it. And before we get into our predictions, I want to remind you guys, if you're new, please subscribe. We're almost at that 100 sub mark, and then be sure to drop comments and questions down below if you have them as you're going along or at the end of the video. We've had guys like, shout out my boy Kyle. He comments on like every video, gives great analysis. I love to read it, and most times he offers at least 1 or 2 points that I didn't even think of, and then I read him every time and I'm like, yep, he's right. And he offered a point on New York, and he kind of made me realize, I ranked London ahead of the Royal Ravens in my power rankings, but I probably would choose New York to win that head-to-head matchup more often than not. So just kind of getting in conversations about that kind of stuff. Then we talked about my Faze comment, just talking about those things. And shout out to Kyle again, he's always commenting. And then also, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong. I think it said Shafael. I have no idea if I said that right. If I didn't, I'm so sorry. But he let me know how the tiebreaker works for seeding in the last video, and it was how I assumed it would work, but I didn't want to say it in case it was incorrect. He said it's if you're tied in points, it goes based on your head-to-head, which that's what I would assume it would be. I don't know if he said like he for sure knew that or not, but that's what I believe he said. He either knew that or thought he knew that, and that would make sense because head-to-head is usually how most sports determine if they have like a tie in a division or something. They usually determine it based on your head-to-head matchups because that's what makes the most sense, directly playing each other. So we can look for that this weekend. If we do have teams in that top 4 that end up tying, like Florida and Chicago or something. And yeah, leave your questions or comments as they pop up during the video or at the end if you want to compile all your thoughts, and we can have a conversation about it. And then also be sure to give that Twitter linked in the description a follow. It's just at CDL Podcast, pretty simple. And then also quickly before we get into predictions, we have one bit of news / like my own wish that I want to touch on. It's a clip from Scump's stream, so I'm sure most of you seen it. If you follow competitive COD, you probably follow Scump. He's kind of the face of it. And he said he would like to see 4 expansion teams added to the league next year. And I know I did touch on this in a comment on the last video when I was replying to somebody, and I said I didn't really get into too much detail because, like I said, I wanted to talk about it here in this video a little bit. But he said he'd like to see 4 expansion teams added to the league next year and have all 16 teams at every event that they play. And from there would be 4 pools of 4 teams that the top 2 teams would come out of into a double elimination 8-team bracket. And I want this bad. It would make it much more like the traditional COD esports we all know and love, since we obviously can't have open teams in the brackets anymore. Due to the franchise nature, they can't let somebody who didn't pay into the league get in, and then all of a sudden if they somehow win it, that'd look really bad on the league, and the people that invested millions and millions and millions of dollars into it would probably be upset if a team that invested 0 was able to get an event win. But if you think back to just last year in Black Ops 4, a lot of our events, besides like the opening event in Vegas and then maybe like the last event, a lot of those events were just the 16 Pro League teams, and then they played from pools into the elimination bracket and stuff. So that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I think it'd be very similar to last year. I don't know how the logistics would work of having every team at every event, because if they do have an event every 2 weeks, I don't know if every team would want to travel. But if they can somehow get that format, I would be so down for that. I think it would be awesome. And having the double elimination bracket and 16 teams and more of a traditional format, especially if it's on LAN, would bring, I think, a little bit more legitimacy to the championships, because people don't know how to count the championships this year with, like, if you win, like, let's say Atlanta Faze wins an event and Dallas, Florida, and Chicago aren't there. Like, yeah, they did win the event. It shows up in the standings. But, like, if they didn't have to play any of the other top 3 teams, how much of an event win really is it? And then so you kind of have people questioning, should we count them as chips or not? And to me, if you've got all 16 teams in the league there and it's on LAN and all of them play and a team wins, just like last year, it's pretty much going to count as a chip. I think that clears up that argument a little bit. So I think it'd be great for the scene. Don't know if it'll happen. Don't know if 4 expansion teams will have the money to invest in, but I'm assuming like Rise Nation's going to invest in hiring Pacman stuff. But we'll get into that in a different video. But I just want to touch on that quickly and hear your thoughts on that. But now we are going to get into the predictions for this stacked event. I'm going to pull up that bracket again and get that all set up, so I'll be back in a second to give those predictions. All right, so we've got the Toronto bracket builder here. Unfortunate that this event can't go on LAN. Obviously, Toronto is kind of like one of those destinations for an event that I really want to get to. For whatever reason, like my top 3 events I want to go to are, shocker, London, Paris, and Toronto. Being from like the Midwest in the US, there's not a lot to see here. And I've been to Paris, and it was like one of the best experiences of my life. So I'd love to go back. And then I've never been to London or the UK at all, so I'd love to visit there and check out obviously the COD event and see the great fans there, because they seem to have the best fans in COD, but then also just check out like the city and the country as a whole. Never been there, so that'd be cool. And then Toronto, that's a little bit closer to home, because obviously Canada, I live in Wisconsin, so Canada's right above us. Toronto's still obviously a decent bit away, but it'd be really cool, I think, to check out the city. I always hear so many cool things about Toronto, so it's an event I'd love to go to, and I'm sure I'll get to it one day, hopefully soon, hopefully within the next few years the events are back and I can get to one there. But looking at the bracket here, we've got some loaded groups. We've got the Huntsmen and Surge playing in round 1 in Group A here, and then we got Ultra and Optic, and then Faze, Rocker, Mutineers, Empire in the bottom group. Clearly that bottom group, that Group B, is the group of death. Kind of wish in a way we could just kind of like pluck out Minnesota and Surge, whose seasons seem to be kind of on the spiral, and then put in London and New York, whose stocks seem to be kind of on the rise a little bit, or they seem to be like that 5 and 6 team. If we could throw those 2 in there instead of like Seattle and Minnesota, and then we could have Ultra stay in and Optic stay in. It seems like to me that's like roughly my top 8 teams right now, so that'd be even cooler. But I mean, talent-wise, this is probably the most competitive event. It would also be kind of nice if we could throw Florida, Atlanta, Dallas, one of those teams, up in the top, and just like throw Surge in the bottom, so that way we could maybe get a Huntsman, Florida, Atlanta, and Dallas semifinal. Obviously, those being pretty much, I think, everyone's unanimous top 4 teams. Some people might have New York in their top 4, but after last event, I think a lot of people would take them out. But we're going to start in the top of the bracket here. I think this video is going to end up being a little shorter because we didn't have much news to touch on since yesterday. We're just going to do these predictions and then pretty much get out and on with the video, so you guys can have a little bit of a quicker prediction video to watch. But honestly, usually before I do the brackets, I kind of look through them, look at them a little bit, and I'm like, what do I think of this one? Where do I think I'm going to go with the predictions? I looked at this bracket, saw that group of death, saw we've got my 2 flyer teams that I always like to pick to go far, Optic and Toronto, playing each other in round 1, and I can only pick one of them to get out of their group, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to see how I feel as the bracket goes along. So honestly, I don't even know who I'm going to pick to win here, especially in that bottom group. You know how confident I always am in Faze, but right now Empire and Florida have been better recently, so we'll see where I'm going to go. I kind of have a somewhat idea, but honestly, I'm winging it on this one a little bit. I'm going to kind of see how I feel as I go along. In the top match, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. I think the Huntsmen win this one. Surge, obviously they're in a downward spiral. They have to win this event. I think, yeah, because Paris is at 100 points. They have to win this event to tie Paris in the standings, and I don't even know what their head-to-head is, so I don't know how that would work. But Seattle is a long shot. I think they kind of know that they're not making top 8. I think they might just be kind of, and I mean, I saw Octane's stream. It was absolutely hilarious last night. It was like him and Dashy were like going on the tour from like BO4 League Play and like BO3, and it was comedy. And I kind of think that it's kind of showing Octane's like, whatever for this year. Kind of going in full entertainer mode, and it was super entertaining. Hope to see him streaming some more in the offseason and stuff. But I got to pick the Surge to lose here. As you see here, I did give him a map because Chicago, like I said, those Scump formal teams always seem to be slow starters in tournaments. And I think the Surge are good enough that if they're focused and trying, they can take a respawn off them. They can take a hardpoint or the Dom. So I think they'll get one of those maps. Huntsmen come out strong in S&D again, and I think Huntsmen win this 3-1. To me, Huntsmen's S&D is what's going to decide if they can win this tournament or not. Their respawn, I'd argue that they're still, along with like Dallas and Florida, like maybe the best respawn team in the game. And then their search looked amazing at the last event up until they ran into New York in the finals. So if they can get that search and destroy on that same page as it was last weekend, to me, they're the most scary team in the game potential-wise because they're the least consistent of those top teams. But when they hit that peak, I think they might almost have the highest peak of any team. On the second match, to me, apart from like the Florida versus Empire match in the first round, which we saw Empire dominate in the last matchup last weekend, this is the hardest match to predict. I feel like Huntsmen over Surge, it's pretty obviously Huntsmen unless something crazy happens. And then I feel Faze over Rockers, pretty obvious. Mutineers Empire is tough. But this match, to me, it's a matchup between the teams that I have ranked 7 and 8. I have Ultra as my 7th team and Optic as my 8th team. And I don't know who to go with here. It seems to me like every time I pick Toronto, they blow it and suck that weekend, and every time I'm like, wow, they suck last weekend, I'm not going to pick them. They do super well. I did pick them to get to that semifinal last event where they did. So there was that, but honestly, this is such a tough matchup to predict to me. I think it's going to go to a map 5, and I don't know where to go with it because I really feel as though Toronto should win it because Optic seems to always start slow and then they make a run. So I think I'm going to go Toronto. It is their home series. Obviously, it's not as effective as normal because they obviously don't have like the home crowd fans like we saw in Minnesota when I was there and stuff. But I'm going to pick Toronto to win this 3-2. I know you're shocked. I've been picking Optic to do things all year, but I think Toronto takes this one 3-2. I think Toronto knows their back's against the wall. They need to get at least like 30 points, I think, to tie Paris in that slot as like the 8th ranked team, and then tiebreakers go to whoever has head-to-head matchups. I don't remember too many Ultra versus Paris matchups, but the head-to-head would then take into effect. So I pick Ultra to win this one 3-2. And then in the knockout match, round 1 here, we've got Surge versus Optic. Again, a decently easy one for me to predict here. I think Optic knows their back is against the wall. And out of the teams that are below the top 8, Optic has the easiest chance to make it into that top 8 spot because Toronto needs to get at least 30 points to tie Paris. Seattle needs to win the event to tie Paris. And then Optic only needs to get out of the groups and to semi, so they have the least bit to go to make it up and catch Paris. And I don't know how their head-to-head would go. I know Paris beat them in the opening weekend in Minnesota, and I don't know how the matchups have gone from there. So Paris has at least one win against them. I would think Optic maybe is winning the head-to-head, but I have no idea. But Optic needs to at least make the semifinal to tie them, and I think they get the win here. I'm going to say they win it 3-1. We'll give Seattle one map again. So I think that Surge puts up a 2-map count this weekend. I think they're just kind of done. Although in that month between the end of the event and playoffs, or like that 3 weeks, I think they might kind of like come to grips and say, hey, you know what, we got to try for champs. They might be able to make a run there, but here I think their weekend ends early. And then up in this top matchup, we see Ultra versus Huntsmen. Ultra have always played Huntsmen very tight when they played them each time this year. I know they went to like that round 11, game 5, I think, in one of the last LAN events. And Ultra's always been able to force them to extended games and stuff. But here I think the Huntsmen hit their form. I think this is a 3-1 series. I like to pick a lot of 3-2s, but I'm going to give the Huntsmen a little respect. I'm going to say that the Huntsmen come out really strong in the search. I think they get a 2-0 series lead, and then Ultra takes the Dom. And then Huntsmen come out strong in the hardpoint again and win it, going into groups undefeated in search. Then here in this knockout round 2, we've got Ultra versus Optic, rematch of the round 1 game, and I think Optic back against the wall. Here they're at 90 points. They need 100 points. I think Slasher is going to say, I'm not losing. I think they're going to take this one. I think it goes 3-2 again, but I think that this time Optic pulls it out. I'm going to keep riding the Optic wave. I think that Draza and Hollow have another event under their belt. They played decently well with like 0.9s last event, even though they had to play Florida twice. They beat Surge. I think it was 3-1 in the last event, so they do that again. And then I think playing Toronto twice instead of Florida twice, They were almost able to beat Florida the first time and then played them decently close the second time. So I think that here playing Toronto twice, since they were that close to Florida, even though Florida didn't look as good last event, they still looked pretty darn good. So I think Optic's able to come out here. They could easily come out by beating Toronto in the first match and then losing to Huntsmen and then maybe beating Toronto again. But this way, I think if they lose the first one, then it's a wake-up call, and then they tie the 100 points and then need to win their next match to take it over. Then going down in here to Group B, the tougher group to predict, in my opinion, because, you've got 3 teams that I believe can come out in the top group. I think Ultra or Optic are very realistic teams to come out. And then in this bottom group, we've got 3 of the top 4. We've got my number 1, number 2, and number 4 teams here in my power rankings from the last episode yesterday. And in the top matchup, it's the easy one of the group to me. I know Minnesota had Atlanta's number earlier in the year on LAN, but online, Minnesota's looked poor. I think Faze comes out. I'm going to say 3-0 on this one. I think it's a 3-0. I want to pick Minnesota to win a map or two because Faze always seems to come out so damn slow, and not even just the first series of the event, but they seem to come out slow in like every series. I mean, that one event we saw them get a reverse sweep like every single series on the way to the final. They just come out so slow, it seems like, in every series they play. But here I think Faze has been hearing all the talk about them being brain dead in-game. They haven't played in a while. I think they're going to take all that criticism and channel, at least right away. I think they're going to come out with a lot of motivation in the first series and come out hot. I don't know if it'll carry on as they start to play the better teams on the weekend, if they'll get a little nervous and then they'll go back to their old ways. But I think at least in the first match, they're going to come out hot, try to prove the doubters wrong, and I think they're going to win it 3-0. And then next, in this bottom matchup, man, it seems like you should pick Empire so easily because they 3-0'd Florida right off the stage so easily. I mean, like, it wasn't even a close series, to be honest. But I don't think I'm going to go with a blowout. I do think that Empire, if the meta stays the same, I think they're the best team in the game right now. I think that Sunday dominance that they had was a little bit better than they actually are, because I don't think they're that much better than Florida, like 3-0 dominance. I don't think they're that much better than those teams. But at the same time, I do think they're very good, and I think this meta fits them very well. And if Illey and Crim are hitting that form, they're scary, because Huke, shottzyy, and Clay have been in form almost all year, and they've just been waiting. Illey and Crim haven't been in bad form, but they've been waiting for them to pick up the form that we know the most winningest player, Crimsix, can hit, and the young talent Illey can hit. They finally seem to have hit it, and if they can keep that up, I think they dominate here. I'm going to say 3-1. I know that's a little shocking. A lot of you are probably going to pick Florida, and a lot of you are probably going to say that 3-1 is disrespectful, and they could 3-2 them. And I could see Florida winning this. I mean, like I said, this is like, along with that Ultra versus Optic matchup that I have happening twice, this is like the most toss-up matchup. I mean, Florida and Dallas are clearly, I have them 1 and 2 in the power rankings. Unfortunate that they have to play in the first series of the weekend. I would love to slide one of them up to the top bracket so we could have on them in the semifinals with those other teams I mentioned. But I think Dallas takes this one 3-1. I think that Crim's going to come out hot again. I think Illey's going to have another good event. I think shottzy's going to have a very good event, and Clay. But I just have this feeling that Huke's been just getting slightly better and better and better every event. I have a feeling that Huke's going to go like Super Saiyan this event. I think he's going to be a beast. I saw like a thing he beat like Sinatra from like the best Overwatch League player who retired to play Valorant. I saw like Huke beat him in Valorant or something. Huke's just a unit at every game he plays. One of my favorite pro players, because I think I've said this, I grew up a Halo fan. Huke's one of my favorite pro players. Dude is just a beast, and I think he's going to absolutely feast this weekend. And then down here in the knockout round 1, I think you all know where I'm going to go here. We've got Rocker and Mutineers. I think that I'm going to have to go with the Mutineers winning this one. Shocker. I'll give Minnesota, should I give them a map? Yeah, I didn't give them a map in the first series, so I got to give them at least one map to win here out of respect. I think they're still a decent team. They just are outmatched a little bit online and stuff. But Florida wins this one 3-1. Not a whole lot to say there. I think everybody would agree Florida's a better team than Minnesota. Minnesota loses 2 matches there, but with the way I have Surge playing and Toronto playing in this event, I think Minnesota's fine. They stay in the top 8, which is really all they needed to do. And then we've got Empire versus Faze here in this top matchup. I think the easy pick here is to take Empire because they looked so good in the last event, and Faze has looked so poor recently. And it's funny to say that Faze has looked so poor considering they have still made it out of their group. That one person did point out that I was wrong, saying that they've been to every final. They haven't. Minnesota did upset them. I think it was in like the LA home series. They did upset them, reverse sweeping them in the semis. But Faze has been out of their group every single event so far, so it's pretty tough to pick against them. But at the same time, Dallas has looked so good, and I don't want to get too much into recency bias, but I do think Dallas is the better team right now. I think this series is going to go the distance. I think it's going to go 3-2. I think Dallas clutches up in the game 5, and I think they win it. But at the same time, Faze has beaten them, I think, the last 2 times they've played, maybe even 3. I know it's at least the last 2 times they played, Faze has beaten them. But Dallas has been very close both times, and that was when Faze was still in a better form because they've been on a little bit of a downfall, and Dallas was in a worse form because Dallas has certainly gotten better over the last few weeks. So I'm taking Dallas to win this one 3-2. And then down here, this matchup is a killer for me. We've got Faze versus Mutineers. Winner moves on to semis. Loser gets knocked out. For the storylines of the whole thing, personally, I'd love to choose Florida because if Faze wins this, moves to the semifinal, and then makes the final, I'm pretty sure if like Faze makes to the final, they guarantee themselves 1 seed. But if Huntsmen and Florida play each other in the semis, then the winner, if they win the event, I'm pretty sure would take over 1 seed. And then if Empire wins the event, they take over 1 seed. So the storylines are way more interesting if Florida wins it. And to be honest, I think they have a good chance at winning it. And if you know anything about me and the way I think about COD, I love the analytics, I love the game, but I love storylines. Storylines to me, and I think to all of you that love competitive COD, are kind of the thing that makes it unique in esports and why we love it so much. The players have such a rich history of teaming together, and then rivalries and Hecz versus Optic, and all these storylines we have of player rivalries and like personal hatred for each other and organizations, and just like the rich history we have in COD. I think we're all in love with the storylines of it. Almost sometimes that's what keeps us watching because, I mean, I don't love Modern Warfare, but just the storylines and the whole Call of Duty aspect just keeps me watching, so I know what the storylines are for next year if new players develop rivalries and if there's new players in the scene that I need to know. And not only because of storylines, but because I think Florida's in a better form right now. I'm going to take Florida to win this. I think it's another 5-game series. I think Faze's search has just been not nearly where it needs to be recently. So for that reason, I think that Florida is able to take them out in a Game 5 search. Now, this is probably the pick between all these matches in this bracket that I feel the least confident in, because for some reason, something about Crowder having this time off and hearing all the crap about his team and those super talented players that I always talk about Atlanta having, still think they're the most raw talent team in the league. For some reason, I don't think those players are going to stay down too long. Maybe this event's another wake-up call, like, hey, we didn't make it out of our group for the first time all year. We got to grind for champs. But for some reason, I have a feeling that team is going to just go super sane and maybe even be able to win this event. But I'm going to go off what we've seen recently and make the smart pick and go Florida, because in a bracket where it feels like so much can happen, I feel like just going with the smart picks is the way to go rather than going bold like I normally do. So we're going Mutineers in that one. But like I said, I wouldn't even be shocked if FaZe win the whole event. If they win the whole damn event, wouldn't be shocked. But got to go Mutineers. Kind of also helps my storylines out. All right, and then here in the top of the bracket, we've got Huntsmen versus the Mutineers. Man, I couldn't pick the tougher matchup to go with. The two teams coming into this event, they are tied in the standings. So this is obviously a huge match because I think they're both at 220 points. So now at this point that they made the semifinals, they'd both be at 240. So the winner of this match breaks the tiebreaker and gets at least at a minimum the 3 seed. Then the loser gets the 4 seed. Loser's guaranteed the 4 seed in this case. And then the winner would guarantee the 3 seed with the possibility of even moving up to the 1. I don't know where to go with it because I think Florida has been the better team over the last few months, but for some reason they showed me some vulnerability in the last event. Scump's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's got the 10mm back. I want to go Huntsman in this matchup, and I think I'm going to go 3-1. And I know that's shocking, and I know it's not because I'm like some kind of Huntsman fanboy, because I mean, I like the Huntsmen, I like Hecz a lot, but they're by no means like this team that I have like this love and I hate everyone else like a lot of the NRG Huntsmen fans do. But I just have this weird feeling about Huntsmen coming into champs time. Scump and formal teams always seem to be looking pretty good around champs time, whether they choke at champs or lose at champs or not. They always seem to be looking pretty good around this time of year. Arcitys and Prestinni won champs last year. They were rounding into form around this time. I think Envoy, obviously, he had a very bad champs and finished dead last, but I think he's been a little bit worse recently. I think he's going to step it up. To me, he's the X factor on the team. If him and Scump can step it up, they're almost unstoppable. I think they're going to beat Florida here. Florida showed a little bit of vulnerability in the last event. I still think that Florida might be a better team than Chicago, but as we know, the better team doesn't always win. I mean, Paris probably wasn't a better team than New York, and they beat them last weekend. The better team in COD, especially online COD, doesn't always win. I do think Florida's slightly a better team than Chicago right now, but I think Chicago's going to hit form. I think they're going to take the S&D. I have a feeling that Florida's going to take map 1, and then I think Chicago's going to roll 3 straight off. They're a momentum team, so after they crush them in the search, I think they're just going to take that momentum, roll it on out, and carry it into the rest of the games and win this one 3-1. Kind of a shocking pick, but I don't know. That's just a gut feeling thing. I know I might get roasted for that, but it's just a weird gut feeling I have. And then down in this bottom matchup, once again, I don't know how you could pick anybody other than Dallas. I mean, Optic, I think they have a good run. This ties them with Paris. We'll have to see how the tiebreaker goes there. But I think Empire take this one. I think it's a 3-2 series, actually. I think it's going to be closer than the Florida Huntsmen series. For some reason, I think that Optics can get into a lot of map 5s this whole weekend. I think they're going to play a lot of teams tough. Draza and Hollow, I mean, I think they're probably pretty good S&D players. I know Slasher's usually generally a pretty good S&D player, and so is Kenny, and so is TJ. They just seem like a team that's built to be very solid in S&D, but also pretty good in respawn, so I think they keep every series they play close. I don't see them getting 3-0'd too often, but I think Dallas is way too hot to lose this. And then here in this final matchup, speaking of storylines, last home series of the year, we've got probably the biggest rivalry in the CDL, the Call of Duty League. We've got Scump versus Crim, Formal versus Crim, Hecz versus Hastro, Huntsmen versus Empire. I almost said Huntsmen versus Envy or Optic versus Envy, but we've got Huntsmen versus Empire, Hecz versus Hastro, like I said, E-Classico. If you are back from the OG days of Envy versus Optic, they always called it E-Classico when they played. Kind of like the two OG teams in Call of Duty, if you will. And I don't know where to go with this one, to be honest, because my head is telling me make the smart pick, take Empire. But if you know anything about the way I like to pick bold, and I think I'm going to pick bold. Huntsmen are going to win this one. I think Huntsmen are going to win it 3-2. And if you have any history watching this podcast, you know that I'm not like some big Huntsmen fan that picks them usually. I think I've only picked them to win like one event this year or something, and I think I picked it wrong. When they did, I don't think they won that event. But I have a feeling that Huntsmen are going to win this. Now, if you would have thrown like Florida, and if you would have thrown them in the group with Dallas, I don't know, they would have probably came out, had to play somebody else. Like if Faze would have been up in the top, Faze probably would have came out of that group if they were in Huntsman's spot, and then maybe I would have had Faze beating Huntsmen. But I just have this weird feeling that Huntsmen are going to hit stride this event. And to be honest, I mean, you could say like that's a terrible pick. We've got all these other good teams there, but they're going to beat each other up so much in that bottom group that I think Huntsman's going to have a little bit easier of a route and then be a little more fresh coming into Sunday and be able to take this event win. And I think Dallas might be viewing them kind of lightly. Dallas has had their number recently. Dallas looked unstoppable in the last event. I think Dallas can kind of be like, I mean, we're going to win this. We're going to win this easy. We own Huntsmen now online, everything we're in their head. But I think Huntsmen are going to come out and try to make a statement ahead of champs. And generally, the team that wins the last event before champs seems to always win it. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pick Huntsmen to win champs. We'll have to see how they look this weekend. Am I confident in this pick? No, this is probably the least confident I've been in a pick all year. Like I said, I could see Faze winning this event. I don't even have them coming out of groups. I could see Empire winning this event. If I'm being honest, if I had to put all the money in the world, bet my life on it, I'm probably betting on Empire, but since I don't have any money on this, my life's not on the line, I'm going to go with a bold pick and go Huntsmen. I could see Mutineers winning this. I could even see a surprise team like Optic winning this, or a shocker team like Toronto making the finals. Can't really see them winning it. But yeah, I think that is probably going to do it for this video. Comment down below who you have winning. I'm sure I'm going to get roasted for having Huntsmen winning, because obviously a lot of you are going to have Empire, Faze, or Florida winning. But like I said, just a gut feeling. Have zero confidence in that pick. I was kind of a toss-up between the four teams and how I felt at the time, but I feel like Scump's going to have a big event. I feel like every time people kind of talk about him in like a bad light like they did for the last event, he has a bounce back, and I think Arcitys is way too consistent to have a poor event. I think him and Formal on the ARs are going to be a deadly duo. I think Prestinni is going to stay consistent on like the third AR/sub, and then I think Envoy is going to have an improvement. And if Envoy and Scump improve, they probably would have won the last event. They should have won the last event, just had a dud on Sunday. But But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Be sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed. Comment, offer your predictions, offer any other predictions you have, like if your prediction's different than mine, offer any other CDL takes you have, if you have something that you heard in the last video that you want to bring up in this video, or something that you thought of, any like kind of random take, or why do you think Empire are going to win? Why do you think Florida are going to win? Why do you think Faze are going to win? Why do you think Huntsmen are going to win? I'm sure all of us are picking one of those 4 teams. And then also comment down below any video ideas you have. After this episode pops up, we're obviously going to have the post-Toronto show reacting to it. But then from there on out, we have like a 3-week break until the next event, which is playoffs. So we're not going to have any podcast to do based on the CDL, but I was thinking about doing like the Salvation's Elite type video, if you know who he is, where he ranks like his top 50 players currently in the league. So based on like the last event, so like if somebody had a really good event, they could be top 5 based on the last event. I was thinking about doing one of those, maybe like a tier list of like the top weapons in competitive COD history, maybe like the top players or something. So yeah, comment down below if you guys have any other video ideas you want to say. It could be something completely different than that. Obviously COD related and esports COD related, but comment down below if you have any video ideas you'd like to see. I'll have that 2 or 3 weeks to throw a couple videos up that aren't podcast related. So let me know if you want to see any of that. Subscribe if you're new. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. We are very close. We're getting there. And like and subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next video. Have fun watching this weekend and look out for the Toronto reactions. And be sure to interact on Twitter during the event if you see anything and want to talk about it. Thanks for watching.